The dawn of independence in 1963 held immense promise for Kenya. After decades of colonial rule, the nation finally had the opportunity to chart its own destiny. The fight for liberation, spearheaded by courageous individuals like Dedan Kimathi, ignited a dream of a just and equitable society. However, this dream quickly turned into a nightmare. The very leaders who inherited power, instead of dismantling the colonial structures of oppression, chose to perpetuate them, enriching themselves at the expense of the masses. The promise of Uhuru remained unfulfilled, a cruel betrayal of the sacrifices made by countless Kenyans. The euphoria of independence masked a harsh reality. The colonial masters may have left, but their exploitative systems remained firmly in place. The transfer of power was more of a handover, a carefully orchestrated transition that ensured the economic interests of the departing colonizers were protected. The new African elite, eager to step into the shoes of their predecessors, readily embraced these systems, morphing into a new breed of oppressors. They inherited the machinery of exploitation and used it to amass wealth and consolidate their power. This betrayal cut deep. It shattered the hopes of a nation yearning for freedom and prosperity. The wounds of colonialism, far from being healed, were reopened and allowed to fester. The struggle for true liberation had just begun. This time, the enemy was not a foreign power, but a homegrown tyranny, a system of governance that prioritized personal gain over the collective good. The people of Kenya found themselves once again subjected to a system designed to keep them impoverished and powerless. The transfer of power from colonial rulers to Kenyan leaders was supposed to usher in an era of freedom and prosperity. Instead, it marked the beginning of a new form of subjugation. Those who inherited the reins of power, instead of dismantling the oppressive colonial structures, chose to occupy the vacant seats of their former masters. They inherited not just the instruments of governance, but also the insatiable appetite for greed and self-enrichment that characterized the colonial regime. The very individuals who had positioned themselves as liberators quickly transformed into the new oppressors. They amassed vast wealth, acquiring land previously stolen from their own people by the colonialists. They built opulent homes and surrounded themselves with luxury, while the majority of Kenyans continued to languish in poverty. The cries for social justice, economic empowerment, and equitable distribution of resources fell on deaf ears. This blatant betrayal of the people's trust had a devastating impact on the socio-political landscape of Kenya. It eroded trust in the government and sowed the seeds of ethnic division and animosity. The new ruling elite, in a bid to maintain their grip on power, resorted to divide and rule tactics, pitting different ethnic communities against each other. This strategy effectively diverted attention from their own corrupt practices and ensured their continued dominance. The consequences of this betrayal continue to haunt Kenya today. The gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, fueled by systemic corruption and a culture of impunity. The dream of a just and equitable society remains elusive, a distant mirage shimmering on the horizon of a nation still grappling with the ghosts of its colonial past. Greed, like a venomous serpent, coiled its way into the heart of Kenya's newly acquired freedom. It poisoned the minds of those entrusted with power, transforming them from liberators to exploiters. The pursuit of personal wealth became their sole obsession, overshadowing the needs of the nation they had sworn to serve. Public resources were treated as personal coffers, plundered with impunity to satisfy insatiable appetites for luxury and self-aggrandizement. Hospitals lay in ruins, schools lacked basic amenities, and infrastructure crumbled under the weight of neglect. The cries of the people for better healthcare, quality education, and improved living standards were met with indifference. The pursuit of personal gain had blinded the ruling elite to the plight of their own people. They had become deaf to the cries of the suffering masses, their hearts hardened by the allure of wealth and power. This insatiable greed had a devastating impact on Kenya's development trajectory. It crippled the nation's potential, stifling innovation and discouraging foreign investment. The economy stagnated, unable to provide employment opportunities for the burgeoning youth population. Poverty, illiteracy, and disease became rampant, trapping millions in a vicious cycle of despair. The chains of greed bound the nation, hindering its progress and suffocating the dreams of its people. The legacy of this avarice continues to cast a long shadow over Kenya, a stark reminder of the corrosive power of unchecked greed and the urgent need for ethical leadership and responsible governance. The unchecked greed of Kenya's post-colonial leadership gave birth to a new aristocracy, a powerful and privileged elite. This select group, often defined by their proximity to political power and their insatiable appetite for wealth accumulation, came to dominate every sphere of Kenyan life. They controlled the levers of government, influenced policy decisions, and manipulated the justice system to serve their interests. This concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few created a system of patronage and cronyism. Those seeking to climb the social and economic ladder quickly learned that loyalty to the ruling elite, rather than merit or hard work, was the key to success. This created a culture of sycophancy and appeasement, stifling dissent and discouraging critical thinking. The consequences of this entrenched inequality are felt in every corner of Kenyan society. Access to quality education and healthcare became a privilege reserved for the children of the elite. Economic opportunities were skewed in their favor, further widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots. The majority of Kenyans found themselves relegated to the margins of society, their voices silenced, their dreams deferred. This legacy of inequality continues to cast a long shadow over Kenya, breeding resentment, fueling social unrest, and hindering the nation's progress. The time has come to dismantle this system of privilege and create a more just and equitable society, where opportunities are available to all, regardless of their social standing or political connections.